Money didn't always come from a printing press. Sometimes it was a cigarette, a ration stamp, or a pile of foreign banknotes stacked as courtroom evidence. A judge spoons thin broth alone rather than touch the food sold outside his own courtroom. And in one ruined capital, the only currency anyone trusted for 3 years wasn't printed by any government. The Meat Detective. Reporter Ray Spriggle climbed into his old truck with a bundle of cash and one plan: buy every pound of illegal meat Pittsburgh would sell him. By spring 1945, wartime rationing promised one legal meat market, but the trade ran like a butcher counter, keeping 2 ledgers, one for ration stamps, one for cash under the table. The Office of Price Administration set ceiling prices and issued ration stamps, but had nowhere near enough investigators to watch every butcher and slaughterhouse in the country. Forged coupons circulated alongside real ones, so a cattle dealer with the right cash and the wrong friends could sell the same meat twice, once to the government's books, once to whoever paid extra. Government posters put meat leggers in the same sentence as spies and saboteurs. In Detroit, agents caught a dealer selling 400 gasoline coupons, most counterfeit, for about $60, around $1,100 today. Spriggle spent 3 weeks posing as a buyer and gathered more than a ton of black market meat. His own newspaper ran the story under his own byline, calling him in print a black marketeer. The series ran in 22 other papers and in Time. Within days, a federal grand jury convened in Pittsburgh, and a Senate subcommittee opened hearings on meat that same week. Meat rationing didn't end until that November. The enforcement gap had outlived Spriggle's expose. Rome's second price list. By late 1945, Rome still had ration cards, official prices, and printed lira. None of it decided what food actually cost. A government survey found that free and black market purchases could eat up as much as 90% of a family's food budget, while the ration card covered only a fraction of what a household actually needed. Picture a grocery list with 10 items on it and a ration shop able to fill just one. Farmers and dealers routed scarce food toward whoever could pay the real price, while families sold jewelry and heirlooms just to keep eating. New Yorker writer Janet Flanner watched the exchange become so normal that Rome's own financial daily printed black market currency rates and food prices side by side, like a second honest ledger running next to the official one. She priced one decent day of food at 500 lira, worth about $1.40 at the street exchange rate then, roughly $26 today. The lira itself traded at around 351 to a black market dollar, a rate worth close to 19 of today's dollars in buying power. By December, ration cards were supplying only about 13% of a fixed Roman diet. The parallel market had stopped being a hidden shop on a side street. It had become the only price system families actually lived inside. The Shed. Vito Genovese had been hiding from a murder charge in New York since 1937, and by the time American forces reached Naples in 1943, he'd made himself indispensable as an interpreter for the occupation government. The system assumed military supplies would stay inside army channels, and Genovese's post came with passes, contacts, and access nobody questioned, like one warehouse key that happened to open 2 doors, one official, one not. He used it to run army trucks, flour, sugar, and olive oil off military convoys and into Naples's illegal market. Investigator Orange C. Dickey worked the case largely alone for months, until a scrap of paper in Genovese's apartment led him to a hidden storeroom locals called simply the Shed, and to 2 burned-out army trucks abandoned in a vineyard outside Nola. In Genovese's own apartment, Dickey found soap, candy bars, and cartons of cigarettes still stamped for the PX. Ordinary army supplies turned into a fortune the moment they reached a market with nothing else to sell. Dickey arrested Genovese on August 27, 1944. Genovese offered him a $250,000 bribe, close to $5 million today, to make the case disappear. Dickey turned it down. Genovese was returned to New York in June of 1945, not on the theft, but on the decade-old murder charge that had been waiting for him the whole time. The Judge Who Wouldn't Buy. Tokyo's food control law rationed rice so tightly after Japan's surrender that a 1946 survey found the legal ration supplied only about 3 of every 5 calories a person needed, like a meal plan missing 2 meals out of 5 every day. By November of 1947, $1, worth about 15 of today's dollars, bought roughly 6 times more on the illegal exchange than the restricted rate open to ordinary citizens. Judge Yoshitada Yamaguchi understood the math better than most. First, he spent his days sentencing people for buying illegal rice, then decided he couldn't do what he punished others for doing. He and his wife lived on thin soup and cornmeal gruel, giving what little food arrived from family to their 2 young sons. By spring, he was suffering from malnutrition. By August, he had collapsed with tuberculosis. In his diary, he wrote that the law was a bad one, but that as long as it remained the law, people were obligated to obey it. He noted that he knew other judges who bought illegal rice quietly, keeping their hands looking clean in public. Yamaguchi died on October 11, 1947. His death made newspapers and stirred sympathy, but it didn't change the law, and it didn't stop the illegal trade his death was meant to condemn. Rice kept moving through Tokyo's back streets exactly as it had the day before he died. The Cigarette Republic. The Reichsmark still existed in 1945. Almost nobody in Berlin wanted it. The currency had lost its value along with the government that printed it, and for 3 years, Berliners increasingly priced scarce goods and tobacco instead. A pack that cost an American soldier a nickel, about 90 cents today, at the base store resold on the black market for as much as 300 marks, roughly $30 then, or about 560 today. 20 cigarettes worked like 20 small denomination coins, easy to split, easy to spend one at a time. One officer's price list from early 1946 shows what a single carton could buy from a Soviet soldier. $200, about $3,400 today. Or an army wristwatch worth $1,000, roughly $17,000 today. In the ruins of the Tiergarten and around Alexanderplatz, whole markets ran on tobacco. And children learned to collect discarded butts, since 20 of them could pay for a day's work fixing a broken window. New Yorker correspondent Joel Sayer, watching the trade that same summer, wrote that lingering on a Berlin street with a lit cigarette would soon draw a circle of children and old men waiting for the butt. The currency reform of June 1948 ended the trade in a single weekend. Overnight, tobacco lost its power, real German money returned, and 3 years of the cigarette economy stopped mattering at all. The street currency. By autumn 1993, Yugoslavia still printed dinars and posted an official exchange rate, but the number every household watched was the one traded on the street. Government-linked dealers were themselves buying up German marks and dollars with freshly printed dinars, chasing the same hard currency ordinary citizens chased. Think of a supermarket cashier who keeps changing the price while a customer waits in line, except one token in that customer's pocket, a German mark, still buys the same lunch no matter what the register says. One mark bought about 250 grams of cheese burek in October, and roughly the same amount the following January, while dinar prices around it kept climbing. By November, street dealers were competing directly with the state for marks and dollars, and the government lost its grip on the unofficial rate. Shopkeepers closed rather than sell goods for dinars that might be worthless before they could restock. Retired World Bank economist Dragoslav Avramovich became the architect of the fix. On January 24, 1994, Yugoslavia issued a new dinar at 1-to-1 parity with the German mark, worth about 64 cents then, roughly $1.45 today. The street money changers thinned out within weeks, and food returned to the shelves. For months, the black market rate had been the country's real price signal. The state ended the episode by copying the exact benchmark the street had trusted all along. Change money. Poland's communist government opened a chain of stores in 1972 that sold real coffee, real chocolate, and real jeans on one condition: no Polish money allowed. The stores were called Pueks, and they took only dollars, marks, or a paper coupon issued by the state bank called a bon towarowy. For an ordinary shopper, it meant keeping 2 wallets in mind at once. One for everyday zloty shops, one for Pueks. An ordinary citizen couldn't legally walk into a bank and buy dollars, so outside every Pueks and every hotel that housed foreigners, a street dealer called a chinkcharis waited to trade zlotys for hard currency at a rate the government pretended not to notice. By 1989, the coupon's street value in zlotys ran to roughly 100 times what it had been in the 1960s, and a single dollar's worth of bon represented something like $2.70 in today's buying power. The government needed that hard currency badly enough that its own stores took it without ever asking where a customer's dollars had come from. On March 16, 1989, entrepreneur Alexander Gawronik opened Poland's first legal private currency exchange in the border town of Świecko. The street's monopoly cracked overnight. What had required a chinkchars on a cold sidewalk could now be done legally across a counter, and the bon quickly lost its reason to exist. A law written for him. In 1961, Moscow police broke up a currency ring and found stacks of foreign banknotes and gold coins piled up as evidence. Accounts differ on the exact total, though the ring's yearly turnover ran to something like 20 million rubles. It belonged to Yan Rokotov, a trader who had scaled ordinary Soviet fartsovka into something closer to a business, buying hard currency and scarce imported goods from foreign visitors and reselling them across Moscow. Picture a small flea market working in 3 steps. Foreigners supplied the goods, runners collected them, organizers like Rokotov resold them across the city. The legal maximum sentence for the crime was 8 years. The court handed down 15 anyway. That still wasn't enough for Nikita Khrushchev, reportedly furious at the sight of the seized wealth stacked in the courtroom. On July 1st, the Presidium decreed the death penalty for large-scale currency crimes and applied it backward to a case already tried and sentenced. Rokotov and his associate Vladislav Fibashenko were retried and sentenced to death. The exact day of the execution isn't settled, though most accounts place it in late July of 1961. The law written to reach one currency trader didn't stop with him. It stayed on the books and was used against other economic crime defendants for years, in a country that had just proven it would rewrite its own rules to win. Which one of these hidden economies surprised you most? Tell us in the comments and subscribe for the next hidden history.